They thought she was just another passenger they could bully. They looked at her skin, her quiet demeanor, and they saw a target. When the flight attendant sneered, "You don't belong in first class," she had no idea she was speaking to the woman who effectively owned the airplane. Dr. Elena Vance didn't scream. She didn't fight. She just let them drag her off the flight in handcuffs while the other passengers laughed. But 20 minutes later, the laughter stopped. Why? Because while sitting in a holding cell, Elena made one phone call that erased $4 billion from the airline's market cap and sent the CEO spiraling into bankruptcy. This isn't just a story about revenge. It's a masterclass in power. Get comfortable. You're about to watch a dynasty crumble. The interior of the Meridian Atlantic, Boeing 787 Dreamliner, smelled of lavender and conditioned leather. It was the scent of exclusivity. In seat 1A, Dr. Elena Vance adjusted the cuffs of her cashmere blazer, looking out the window at the rain-slicked tarmac of JFK International Airport. To the casual observer, Elena looked like a woman traveling on a lucky break. She was young, black, and dressed in a way that didn't scream money, but whispered it. She wore no logos. Her watch was a vintage Cartier tank, understated and scratched from use. Not a diamond-encrusted Rolex meant to blind people. She had her noise-cancelling headphones around her neck and an iPad Pro resting on her lap, displaying a complex spreadsheet regarding Project Horizon. She wasn't just a passenger. She was the founder and managing partner of Vance Capital, a private equity firm that had quietly outperformed BlackRock and Vanguard in the green energy sector for 3 consecutive quarters. She was currently managing a portfolio worth $12 billion, but the crew of Flight 404 to London Heathrow didn't know that. "Champagne, ma'am?" Eleanor looked up. The flight attendant, whose name tag read Tiffany, offered a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. It was the kind of smile practiced in mirrors, tight and dismissive. "Sparkling water with a slice of lime, please," Elena said, her voice calm, possessing the melodic cadence of someone who spent her days negotiating hostile takeovers. "We save the sparkling water for full-fare guests," Tiffany said, her voice dropping an octave, dripping with faux politeness. "I can get you tap." Elena paused. She had paid $14,000 for this ticket. She was a Diamond Medallion member. But she was tired. She had just spent a week in Washington, D.C., advising the Department of Energy. She didn't have the energy to correct a 20-something who judged net worth by the size of a handbag logo. "Tap is fine. Thank you, Tiffany." Tiffany smirked, turned on her heel, and walked away. Elena sighed, returning to her spreadsheet. She was used to this. The microaggressions, the assumptions. Usually she let them slide. She was a lion. She didn't concern herself with the opinions of sheep. But the atmosphere in the cabin shifted 10 minutes later. The plane was nearly fully boarded. The heavy footsteps of a late arrival thudded against the carpet. Elena felt a shadow loom over her. "Excuse me. You're in my seat." The voice was nasally, entitled and loud. Elena looked up to see a man who looked like a caricature of Wall Street excess. He was in his late 40s, wearing a suit that was too shiny, with a face flushed red from what smelled like a pre-flight whiskey binge. He was holding a Toomey carry-on like a weapon. "I beg your pardon?" Elena asked, removing her glasses. "1A. That's my seat. I always sit in 1A. The man snapped. He looked at his boarding pass, then at her, his lip curling in disgust. "You must be confused. Economy is back there, sweetheart. Way back." Elena glanced at the digital display above her seat. It clearly glowed 1A. She looked at her own boarding pass on her phone. "I'm afraid you're the one who is mistaken," Elena said, keeping her voice level. "This is seat 1A, and this is my assigned seat. Perhaps you're in 1B. The man laughed, a harsh, barking sound that drew the attention of the surrounding passengers. 1B? Do I look like a B-list guy to you? I'm energetic. I'm a legacy flyer. I'm distinct. He leaned in closer, his sour breath invading her personal space. Look, I don't know how you upgraded. Maybe an employee pass. Maybe a diversity raffle. But I need this bulkhead. I have long legs. So, get up. Elena felt the familiar cold steel tighten in her gut. It was the feeling she got right before she dismantled a CEO in a boardroom. She didn't move. She didn't blink. Sir, I paid full fare for this seat. I am not moving. The man's face turned a darker shade of crimson. He turned around and snapped his fingers loudly. Stewardess! Tiffany! Get over here! Tiffany came rushing from the galley, looking concerned. For him. Mr. Sterling, oh my goodness, I didn't see you board. Is everything okay? Sterling. The name rang a bell in Eleanor's mind. Greg Sterling, or maybe Gary. Some mid-level hedge fund manager who made headlines last year for a messy divorce and a failed crypto scheme. He wasn't a titan. He was a gambler. No, it's not okay, Sterling spat, pointing a thick finger at Elena. This woman is in my seat. I specifically requested 1A. You know I always fly 1A. Tiffany looked at Elena. The mask of customer service fell away completely, replaced by open annoyance. Ma'am, Tiffany said, her tone sharp. I need to see your boarding pass. Eleanor silently held up her phone. Tiffany scanned it with her eyes, not even bothering to use the scanner. Okay. Well, obviously there's been a computer error, Tiffany said, waving her hand dismissively. Mr. Sterling is a Platinum Key member. If the system double-booked, priority goes to him. You'll have to move. Move to where? Elena asked. We have a seat in Economy Plus. Row 12. It's a window, Tiffany said, as if she were offering a starving person a feast. Grab your things. I am not moving to economy, Elena said, her voice hardening. I bought a first-class ticket. If there is a double booking, which I doubt, you need to offer me compensation or a seat in this cabin. Those are the FAA regulations. Sterling groaned, rolling his eyes. Oh God, here we go. The legal lecture. Just get her off, Tiff. She's ruining my vibe. Mom? Tiffany stepped closer, invading Elena's space. I am giving you a direct order from a flight crew member. If you do not comply, I will have to treat this as a security threat. Do you really want to go to jail over a seat? Elena looked at Tiffany. Then she looked at Sterling, who was smirking, checking his Rolex. They saw a nuisance. They saw a woman who didn't belong. They had no idea that Elena Vance was currently in the final stages of approving a $4 billion liquidity injection into Meridian Atlantic's parent company, Global Transit Holdings, a deal that was the only thing keeping this airline from insolvency. I want you to think very carefully about what you are doing, Tiffany, Elena said softly. Check the manifest again. Check the name Vance. I don't care if your name is Beyoncé, Sterling interjected. Get out. Tiffany reached for her intercom. Captain, we have a non-compliant passenger in 1A, refusing to follow crew instructions, requesting removal. The war had begun. The captain, a burly man named Miller, with a mustache that looked like a relic from the 1980s, emerged from the cockpit. He didn't look impartial. He looked annoyed that his pre-flight checklist had been interrupted. What's the problem here? Miller demanded, his voice booming in the small cabin. She's squatting in my seat, Captain, Sterling lied smoothly, playing the victim. I tried to be polite. Tiffany tried to be polite. She's being aggressive. I think she's drunk. Eleanor's eyes widened slightly. Aggressive? Drunk? She hadn't raised her voice. She hadn't touched a drop of alcohol. This was the narrative being spun in real time. "I have not had a drink," Elena stated clearly, looking Miller in the eye. "And I am sitting in the seat I purchased. Here is the ticket." She held the phone up again. Captain Miller didn't even look at the screen. He looked at Sterling. "Mr. Sterling, sorry for the trouble. We'll get this sorted." He turned his bulk toward Elena. "Ma'am, I'm the commander of this aircraft. My word is law. You are disrupting this flight. You are upsetting my premium passengers. Now you can walk off, or we can drag you off. But you are not flying to London on my plane." Elena looked around the cabin. A few passengers in first class were watching. An older woman looked sympathetic, but looked away when Elena caught her eye. A young tech bro in 2B was filming it on his phone, snickering. Elena realized something then. This wasn't about a seat anymore. This was about power dynamics. If she got up and walked away, she accepted their narrative. She accepted that she was less than. But if she stayed, if she let them escalate this, she would have the evidence she needed to bury them. She made a calculation. The deal with Meridian Atlantic was scheduled to be signed tomorrow morning in London. That was why she was flying. The papers were on her iPad. If she didn't sign, the airline's credit rating would hit junk status by noon. "I am not disrupting anything," Elena said, locking her iPad and slipping it into her bag. "I am a paying customer. If you remove me, you are violating your own contract of carriage, specifically Section 4, Paragraph 2, regarding involuntary denial of boarding. And I promise you, Captain Miller, that will be the least of your problems." "Are you threatening me?" Miller's face turned purple. "That's it. That's a federal offense, threatening a flight crew." He grabbed his radio. "Tower, this is Flight 404. Requesting airport police at the gate immediately. Level 3 disturbance." Sterling chuckled, finally sitting on the armrest of the seat across the aisle. "Bye-bye, sweetheart. Enjoy the no-fly list." Elena sat back. She took a deep breath. She needed to remain perfectly calm. The more hysterical they got, and the calmer she remained, the worse it would look for them. She unlocked her phone and sent a single text message to her chief legal officer, Matteo. Code red. Meridian Flight 404. Prepare the Scorched Earth Protocol. Do not execute until I give the signal. Matteo replied instantly. Stand by. We are watching the tracker. Are you safe? Elena typed. Not for long. 2 minutes later, 3 Port Authority officers boarded the plane. They were large, heavily armed, and clearly briefed by the captain that there was a dangerous passenger on board. That's her, Tiffany pointing a manicured finger at Eleanor like she was a witch in Salem. She threatened the captain. She's refusing to move. The lead officer, a man with a shaved head, marched up to 1A. Ma'am, get up, now. Officer, I have done nothing wrong. I have a valid ticket. I said up! The officer didn't wait. He reached out and grabbed Elena's arm. His grip was bruisingly tight. Ow! You are hurting me, Elena said, finally letting a crack of distress show in her voice. I am coming. Let go. Stop resisting, the officer shouted, a phrase used to justify force even when there is no resistance. He yanked her out of the seat so hard she stumbled into the aisle. Her knee hit the metal frame of the seat opposite her, sending a sharp bolt of pain up her leg. Get her bag, the officer barked at his partner. Elena regained her footing, smoothing her blazer with her free hand. I am walking, she said icily. Unhand me. You're under arrest for interfering with a flight crew, the officer said. He spun her around. Hands behind your back. The sound of the handcuffs ratcheting shut was the loudest sound in the plane. Click, click, click. Sterling began to clap. Finally! Great job, officers! Keep the skies safe." A few other passengers joined in the applause. It was a sickening, isolated sound. As they frog-marched her down the aisle, past the onlookers in economy who were craning their necks to see the criminal, Elena made eye contact with the young man in 2B who was still filming. "Make sure you post that," she said to him, her voice cutting through the noise. "Tag Meridian Atlantic." Tiffany stood at the cockpit door, arms crossed, looking triumphant. "Maybe next time you'll listen when you're told where you belong," she whispered as Eleanor was shoved past her. Eleanor paused for a microsecond. She looked at Tiffany, then at Captain Miller, and finally at Sterling, who was already settling into her seat, sipping the champagne she had been denied. "Enjoy the flight," Elena said. "It's going to be the most expensive seat you ever sat in." They pushed her onto the jet bridge. The cool air hit her face. The door of the plane closed behind her with a heavy thud, sealing her fate, and theirs. As they walked her up the ramp to the terminal, Elena closed her eyes. She wasn't crying. She was calculating. She visualized the contract on her iPad. Meridian Atlantic Fleet Modernization Fund. Principal investor, Vance Capital. Investment amount, $4,000. Status, pending signature. She opened her eyes. The officers led her toward a holding room near the gate. "I need my phone call," Elena said. "You'll get it when we process you," the officer grunted. "No," Elena said, stopping dead in the middle of the concourse, forcing the officers to stop with her. "I know my rights. You can hold me, but you cannot deny me counsel. I need my phone. Now." Something in her voice, the absolute, unshakable authority of a woman who commanded billions, made the officer hesitate. He looked at her expensive suit, her calm face. He started to wonder if maybe, just maybe, the captain had made a mistake. He pulled her phone out of her confiscated bag and held it up to her ear as her hands were still cuffed. "One call. Make it quick." Elena leaned into the phone. "Siri, call Matteo." The line rang once. "Elena!" Matteo's voice was tense. "Matteo," Elena said, her voice echoing in the busy terminal. "Execute Protocol 0. Withdraw the offer." "The whole thing?" Matteo gasped. "Elena, that's $4 billion. The penalty clauses—" "I don't care about the penalties. Trigger the material adverse change clause. Cite reputational risk and gross negligence by management. And Matteo—" "Yes?" "Call the SEC. Tell them there's about to be a massive sell-off of Meridian stock. I want to short it before the market closes." She looked at the officer holding the phone. He was staring at her, his mouth slightly open. He had heard the words $4 billion and SEC. "And Matteo," Elena added, a cold smile finally touching her lips. "Get the jet ready. I'm going to London anyway. I have a competitor to fund." She nodded to the officer. "I'm done. You can take me to jail now." "All right, let's continue the story of Dr. Elena Vance and Meridian Atlantic." The holding room smelled of stale coffee and desperation, a small windowless box with chipped paint and a single metal bench bolted to the wall. Elena sat on the cold steel, her wrists still aching from the handcuffs. An officer, a younger, less seasoned man than the one who had cuffed her, had eventually uncuffed her after her phone call, visibly shaken by the snippets of conversation he'd overheard. He had then left the room, clearly wanting no part of the unfolding disaster. Elena wasn't angry. Anger was an emotion for the weak, a distraction. She felt a profound, chilling clarity. They had underestimated her. They had seen a black woman in first class and immediately assigned her a narrative. Doesn't belong. Troublemaker. Unruly. They hadn't seen the billions, the influence, the intricate network of power she commanded. Her phone, now placed on the small table in front of her, buzzed. It was Matteo. Confirmation of withdrawal. Global Transit Holdings notified. They are speechless. SEC notified of potential market instability regarding Meridian Atlantic due to significant internal governance issues. Options for shorting Meridian have been placed. What's next, Elena? Elena smiled faintly. Next is the quiet part. Let the market speak. She knew the immediate impact wouldn't be public. Meridian Atlantic would try to control the narrative internally. They would try to salvage the deal. But it was too late. The dominoes were already falling. She checked her newsfeed. Nothing yet. The young tech bros video hadn't surfaced. Not yet. She knew it would. Social media was a hungry beast, always looking for its next meal. And a powerful black woman being dragged off a plane for no reason? That was caviar. Hours passed. The quiet room was only broken by the occasional murmur of conversations outside the door. No one came to question her. No one offered her food or water. They seemed to have forgotten about her, or perhaps were too scared to face her. Then her phone vibrated again. This time it wasn't Matteo. It was a general news alert. Breaking. Meridian Atlantic stock plummets in after-hours trading. Mystery 4B investment pulled. Elena finally allowed herself a small, mirthless laugh. The market had indeed spoken. She scrolled further down. Another alert. Viral video shows. Passenger dragged off Meridian Atlantic flight. Racism allegations surface. There it is, she thought. The tech bro had delivered. She clicked the link. The video was grainy, shaky, clearly filmed on a phone. It showed the entire exchange, from Sterling's obnoxious claims to Tiffany's dismissive attitude, to Captain Miller's aggressive tone. Then, the brutal moment the officers yanked her from her seat, the sickening click of the handcuffs. It was all there. Unfiltered. Undeniable. The comment section was a maelstrom. Disgusting. This is how they treat black women in first class? Meridian Atlantic clearly has a systemic problem. The smug look on that other passenger's face. I hope he gets what's coming to him. Boycott Meridian. Justice for Flight 1A. Elena felt a profound sense of vindication, not because she reveled in public shaming, but because the truth was out. The silent indignities she and countless others faced were now in the harsh glare of public scrutiny. Suddenly, the door to the holding room burst open. This time, it wasn't an officer. It was a man in an expensive suit, his face pale and sweating despite the cool airport air. He held a phone to his ear, his voice a frantic whisper. "She's in here," he shouted into the phone. He looked at Eleanor with wide, horrified eyes. "Dr. Vance! My God, Dr. Vance! I'm Mr. Peterson, head of airport operations. This is all a terrible misunderstanding." He gestured frantically to the retreating officer. "Get her release papers. Now. And get her whatever she wants. Coffee? Water? Anything." Elena watched him, an unblinking predator observing its cornered prey. "Mr. Peterson," she said, her voice calm, cutting through his panicked bluster. "It's too late for misunderstandings." He looked at her, his jaw slack. "The news, the stock, your investment. I just got off the phone with Mr. Davies, the CEO of Global Transit Holdings. He's apoplectic." "I imagine he is," Elena said. $4 billion tends to have that effect. Peterson wrung his hands. "Dr. Vance, please, tell me what we can do. Anything. We can offer you a full refund, a lifetime of free first-class travel, an official apology from the CEO. Captain Miller has been suspended. The flight attendant, Tiffany, has been fired on the spot. Mr. Sterling is being investigated by the FBI for harassment. What can we do to make this right?" Elena stood up, stretching her stiff limbs. Her knee throbbed. "You can't," she said, her voice devoid of emotion. You can't make it right, because this isn't about me getting a free flight, Mr. Peterson. This is about a culture of dismissal, of prejudice, of treating paying customers with contempt based on assumptions. That culture cost you $4 billion today, and it's going to cost you a lot more. The young officer returned, clutching a clipboard. Dr. Vance, you're free to go. All charges dropped. Meridian Atlantic is offering a full apology and— I don't need their apologies or their free flights, Elena interrupted. She picked up her bag. I need my car, and I need a flight to London. My private flight. Peterson stammered, Of course, we'll arrange everything. Our executive lounge is— No, Elena said, heading for the door. I don't want to see another Meridian Atlantic logo for the rest of my life. As she walked out of the holding room, Peterson scurried behind her, practically begging. Elena ignored him. She was already mentally boarding her own jet. London awaited, and with it, a new investment opportunity. For a competitor, perhaps, the Meridian Atlantic plane, Flight 404, was still at the gate, delayed indefinitely as the crew was questioned, and a new captain and flight attendant scrambled to replace the dismissed ones. Sterling, now undoubtedly facing the wrath of the FBI and the public, was probably still in Eleanor's original seat, utterly oblivious to the true cost of his arrogance. Eleanor Vance, the silent titan, had spoken, and the world had listened. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic in London, the Global Transit Holdings, GTH boardroom, was a scene of unbridled chaos. David Davies, the CEO, a man whose corporate facade usually never cracked, was currently screaming into a speakerphone, his face a mottled purple. $4 billion, Matteo. $4 billion. What do you mean, material adverse change? What change? I just spoke to Eleanor Vance yesterday. She was excited. The papers were ready for signing this morning. Matteo Thorne, Vance Capital's chief legal officer, listened calmly from his New York office, a small, grim smile playing on his lips. Mr. Davies, I believe Dr. Vance made it abundantly clear that the material adverse change clause could be invoked if there were any actions or events that significantly impaired the reputation or operational stability of GTH or its subsidiaries. Being dragged off a Meridian Atlantic flight in handcuffs for interfering with a flight crew certainly qualifies. A stunned silence fell over the GTH boardroom. The half-dozen directors gathered around the polished mahogany table looked at each other, their faces slowly draining of color. Dragged off? Davies whispered, his voice suddenly weak. What are you talking about? I suggest you check social media, Mr. Davies, Matteo replied. There's a rather compelling video making the rounds. It paints a very clear picture of Meridian Atlantic's, and by extension, Global Transit Holdings, customer service philosophy. He paused, letting the information sink in. Oh, and by the way, we've also informed the SEC of our concerns regarding Meridian Atlantic's governance and potential systemic issues. Given the sudden withdrawal of such a significant investment and the nature of the events leading up to it, we felt it was our fiduciary duty to alert the relevant authorities to potential market instability. The phone line went dead on Matteo's end. Davies had slammed it down. Meridian Atlantic. Director Thompson, a silver-haired woman who managed GTH's airline portfolio, gasped. Which flight? Who was involved? Davies, still shaking, fumbled with his iPad, his fingers clumsy as he navigated to Twitter. Within seconds the video was playing, magnified on the large boardroom screen. The grainy footage showed the entitled Sterling, the sneering Tiffany, the blustering Captain Miller. And then Eleanor Vance, calm, composed, being roughly pulled from her seat, the harsh click-click-click of the handcuffs echoing in the hallowed boardroom. The silence was deafening. Every board member watched, transfixed, as the scene unfolded. They saw Elena's quiet dignity, her calm rebuke. They heard her promise, "It's going to be the most expensive seat you ever sat in." "My God," Director Thompson breathed, her hand flying to her mouth. "That's Dr. Vance, the Dr. Vance, founder of Vance Capital." Another director, a former airline executive, buried his face in his hands. "We just lost $4 billion. $4 billion because of a damn seat." Davies finally found his voice, a raw, strangled sound. "Get me Captain Miller on the phone. Get me Tiffany. Get me Peterson. I want every single person involved in this atrocity, fired and blacklisted from the industry. And that passenger, Sterling, I want his Platinum Key membership revoked, his name on every no-fly list we can get him on. I want him sued for defamation." But the damage was already done. The stock market, reacting to the news of the pulled investment and the SEC inquiry, had gone into a freefall in after-hours trading. Meridian Atlantic, a struggling subsidiary, was now teetering on the brink of bankruptcy. The public firestorm was just beginning. News channels picking up on the viral video and the sudden stock crash were running with the story. The narrative was clear. Powerful, racist airline humiliates black CEO, pays staggering price. Back in New York, Elena Vance was being escorted through a private terminal to her waiting jet. She walked with a slight limp, a physical reminder of the day's indignities. But her resolve was iron. "Matteo," she said into her phone, "make sure a formal press release is drafted. State that Vance Capital severed ties with Global Transit Holdings due to fundamental disagreements regarding corporate governance and their commitment to diversity and inclusion. Don't mention the incident directly. Let the public connect the dots." "Consider it done, Elena," Matteo replied, a note of awe in his voice. "The shorts are paying off, by the way. Meridian's market cap just took another dip." Elena smiled, stepping onto the private jet. The cabin was plush, quiet, and filled with the scent of possibility. Her own pilot greeted her. "London, Dr. Vance?" "London," she confirmed. "And tell the caterer to make sure we have plenty of sparkling water with lime. I have a competitor to meet." As her private jet ascended into the night sky, leaving JFK behind, she imagined the chaos unfolding in David Davies's boardroom. The panic, the recriminations, the desperate attempts to staunch the bleeding. It was a symphony of destruction, orchestrated by one woman who was simply tired of being told where she belonged. The cost of arrogance, she mused, was always exponential. And today, Meridian Atlantic had paid the ultimate price. The flight to London on Eleanor's private Gulfstream G650 was a sanctuary of silence, a stark contrast to the cacophony she had left behind in New York. While she slept a few hours of restful, unbothered sleep, the world below her was burning. By the time her wheels touched down at Luton Airport's private terminal, Meridian Atlantic's stock ticker, MDN, looked like a flat line on a heart monitor. It had opened at $42.50. It was currently trading at $14. Tatutos. Elena didn't check her phone immediately. She freshened up in the jet's lavatory, applying a fresh coat of lipstick and straightening her blazer. She stepped out onto the tarmac, into the grey London drizzle, where a black Rolls-Royce Phantom was waiting. "Good morning, Dr. Vance," the driver said, holding an umbrella over her. "Where to?" "Canary Wharf," Elena said. "One Canada Square, the headquarters of Sovereign Airways." Inside the car, she finally opened her laptop. The inbox was a disaster zone. 300 emails from David Davies, 50 voicemails, a desperate plea from the board of directors of Global Transit Holdings. She ignored them all and opened a new email draft. She typed a single subject line, "Meeting confirmed." She sent it to Sir Julian Cross, the CEO of Sovereign Airways, Meridian's fiercest rival. Sovereign was a legacy carrier, known for impeccable service, but struggling with cash flow due to rising fuel costs. They were the gentlemen of the industry, while Meridian was the aggressive corporate raider. Meridian had been trying to acquire Sovereign for months, a hostile takeover that would have gutted the company and laid off thousands. The $4 billion Elena was supposed to give Meridian was the war chest they needed to kill Sovereign. Now, she was bringing the ammunition to the other side. When she arrived at One Canada Square, the reception was very different from JFK. Sir Julian Cross met her in the lobby himself. He was a tall man in his 60s, with old-school manners and a look of genuine confusion on his face. "Dr. Vance," he said, shaking her hand warmly. "I must admit, when your office called mid-flight, I thought it was a prank. We were under the impression you were financing our executioner." "Plans change, Sir Julian," Elena said, her voice smooth. "Shall we go up?" In the boardroom overlooking the Thames, Elena laid it out. "I have $4 billion in liquidity that needs a home," she said, sliding a term sheet across the polished table. "Capital that was designated for fleet modernization and route expansion. I am offering it to Sovereign Airways in exchange for a 15% equity stake and a seat on the board." Sir Julian put on his glasses. He read the terms. His hands shook slightly. "Dr. Vance, this saves us. This makes us untouchable. But why? Why switch sides so abruptly? Meridian will sue you for breach of faith." "They can try," Elena said. "But the material adverse change clause in my previous letter of intent is ironclad. Meridian Atlantic is currently undergoing a catastrophic brand collapse. Investing in them would be a violation of my fiduciary duty to my own partners." She pulled up the live news feed on the conference room screen. CNN. The $4 billion seat. How one act of racism bankrupted an airline. Sir Julian watched the footage of Eleanor being dragged off the plane. He looked at the woman sitting across from him, composed, brilliant, and utterly formidable. "My God," he whispered. "They did this to you?" "They did," Eleanor said. "And now I'm doing this to them." "Do we have a deal, Sir Julian?" He didn't hesitate. "We have a deal." As the digital signatures were applied, Elena's phone rang again. It was David Davies. "Put him on speaker," Sir Julian suggested, a glint of steel in his own eye. "I think he deserves to know who just bought his debt." Elena swiped the green button. "David, you're interrupting a meeting." "Elena, thank God!" Davies sounded like he was hyperventilating. "Look, we've fixed it. I fired Miller. I fired the girl. We issued a statement. Please, you have to stop the SEC call. You have to reissue the press release. The stock is halted. We're bleeding out." "I'm afraid I can't do that, David," Elena said, looking at Sir Julian. "Why not? We can renegotiate. We'll give you more equity. 20%. "I already have a deal, David," Elena said coolly. "I've just deployed the capital. The $4 billion is gone." "What? Who? Who could possibly absorb that much liquid capital in 12 hours? "I'm sitting here with Sir Julian Cross," Elena said. There was a silence on the line, so profound it felt like the phone had died. "Julian," Davies choked out. You gave the money to Sovereign." "Hello, David," Sir Julian chimed in, his voice rich with satisfaction. "Dr. Vance and I were just discussing the future of the transatlantic routes. We're thinking of expanding. I hear some slots at JFK might be opening up soon due to insolvency." "You can't do this," Davies screamed. "That's my money. That was my deal." "It was never your money, David," Elena said. "It was my money, and I choose to invest it with companies that don't drag their partners out of first class in handcuffs. Goodbye, David." She hung up. "Now?" Elena said, standing up. I believe I have a return flight to catch. I'd like to fly Sovereign this time. First class. Dr. Vance, Sir Julian smiled. You own the plane. While the corporate world was imploding, Flight 404 finally landed at Heathrow. It was 6 hours late. Greg Sterling woke up with a groan. The champagne had given him a headache. He stretched his legs in seat 1A, feeling satisfied. He had won. He had gotten the seat. He had shown that woman her place. He grabbed his phone and turned off airplane mode. Usually, when he landed, he had 3 or 4 emails, maybe a text from his wife. His phone froze. It vibrated so hard it nearly fell out of his hand. It buzzed continuously for 45 seconds. 145 missed calls. 2,000 plus. Twitter mentions. 500 LinkedIn notifications. 60 texts. What the hell? He muttered. He opened his texts first. The top one was from his boss at the hedge fund, Apex Partners. Boss. Don't bother coming into the London office. Don't bother coming back to New York. You're fired. Effective immediately. HR is mailing your personal effects. You idiot. Sterling's stomach dropped. He scrolled down. Wife. I saw the video. Greg, how could you? The kids are crying. People are throwing eggs at the house. I'm taking them to my mother's. Do not contact me. Unknown number. I hope you die, you racist pig. Unknown number. We know where you live. He opened Twitter. He was trending. Greg Sterling. Is racist was the #1 trend in the world. Boycott Apex was #2. The video was everywhere. He watched himself. He looked drunk, sweaty, and cruel. He heard his own voice. Do I look like a B-list guy to you? He looked up. The passengers were deplaning. As he stood up to grab his bag from the overhead bin, he noticed everyone staring at him. Not with envy, but with disgust. A young woman in the aisle seat, the one who had been filming, looked him dead in the eye. Was it worth it? She asked. I didn't, Sterling stammered. He walked out of the jet bridge, his legs shaking. He expected to breeze through customs. Instead, 2 officers from the Metropolitan Police were waiting at the gate. Gregory Sterling? Yes? We have a request from the FBI to detain you for questioning regarding an incident of federal airspace interference and hate speech allegations pending in the United States. Please come with us. But I'm a platinum member, Sterling squeaked, reverting to his only defense. Not anymore, sir, the officer said dryly. Meridian Atlantic just issued a lifetime ban for you. And since they flew you here and refused to fly you back, well, you're in a bit of a pickle, aren't you? As Sterling was led away, he saw a news monitor in the terminal. The headline scrolled in bright red. Vance Capital Partners with Sovereign Airways in historic 4B deal. Meridian Atlantic files for emergency bankruptcy protection. He realized then who the woman in 1A was. He had kicked a billionaire off a plane to steal her seat. And in doing so, he had nuked his own career, his marriage, and the airline he loved. He slumped against the wall, the fight draining out of him. He was indeed a legacy flyer now, a legacy of ruin. The collapse of Meridian Atlantic didn't happen in a day. It was a slow, agonizing asphyxiation that the entire world watched with bated breath. But for the people who had ignited the spark, Greg Sterling, Tiffany the flight attendant, Captain Miller, and CEO David Davies, the consequences were immediate, intimate, and devastating. 6 months after the incident on Flight 404, the Meridian Atlantic headquarters in Atlanta looked like a funeral home. The towering glass structure, once a symbol of global dominance, was now a fortress under siege. The withdrawal of Elena Vance's $4 billion investment had triggered a liquidity event that no accountant could fix. The market smelled blood. When Vance Capital pulled out, citing governance failures, other institutional investors panicked. Pension funds dumped the stock. Hedge funds shorted it into oblivion. The stock price, which had traded proudly at $42.50, was now delisted, trading as a penny stock on the pink sheets for 0 to 18. David Davies, the man who had once bragged about his ruthless efficiency, sat in his office for the last time. His desk was packed into a single cardboard box. He wasn't leaving voluntarily. The board had voted unanimously to remove him for gross negligence. But the public humiliation was worse than the professional one. Davies had tried to go out for dinner the previous night at his usual steakhouse. The maitre d', a man who had bowed to him for 20 years, had stopped him at the door. "I'm sorry, Mr. Davies," the man had said, loud enough for the crowded lobby to hear. "We're fully booked." "I can see empty tables," Davies had snapped. "Those are for our valued guests," the maitre d' replied, a cold smile playing on his lips. "We have a new policy. We don't serve people who destroy American icons. Please leave." Davies had walked out to the sound of slow clapping from the bar. Now, carrying his box to the elevator, he realized his severance package had been frozen by the bankruptcy courts. He was 58 years old, unhirable, and facing 7 different class action lawsuits. He would spend the rest of his life in depositions, watching his personal fortune evaporate in legal fees. If Davies's fall was a tragedy of hubris, Greg Sterling's was a comedy of errors. Sterling had landed in London thinking he was a hero. He returned to New York a pariah. The FBI investigation into interference with a flight crew didn't result in jail time. His lawyers managed to plead it down to a massive fine and community service. But the court of public opinion offered no plea deals. The internet, in its terrifying efficiency, had dissected his entire life. They found his old frat photos. They found a podcast appearance where he made questionable jokes about urban crime. They found his ex-wife's blog posts about his gambling debts. He was fired from Apex Partners via a courier letter. He lost his deferred bonuses, but the real hard karma hit him in the most mundane way possible: travel. Greg Sterling had defined himself by his status. He was a Platinum Key member. He was first class. Now, he was on the national no-fly list. 3 months after the incident, Sterling had to get to Chicago for a desperate job interview with a mid-tier logistics firm that didn't check Google. He couldn't fly. He couldn't take the Acela train because Amtrak had quietly banned him too, citing security concerns after passengers recognized him and caused a disturbance. So, Greg Sterling, the man who refused to sit in 1B, found himself on a Greyhound bus. It was a 20-hour ride. The bus was packed. The air conditioning was broken. The toilet in the back was leaking. "Excuse me," Sterling muttered to the large man sitting next to him, a guy eating a tuna sandwich that smelled of sulfur. "Can you move your leg? You're in my space." The man looked at Sterling. He chewed slowly. Then he recognized him. "Hey," the man said, his voice rising. "You're that guy. The plane guy." The bus went silent. Heads turned. Phone cameras came out. "I'm not," Sterling started, pulling his hoodie up. "Yeah, you are," a woman from the back yelled. "You're the guy who kicked that lady off. You like legroom, huh? How's the legroom back there?" For the next 18 hours, Greg Sterling lived in a hell of his own making. People threw popcorn at him. They played the viral video on loop at max volume. When the bus stopped at rest stations, the driver, a black woman named Patricia, made sure Sterling was the last one off and the first one back on, giving him exactly 30 seconds to use the bathroom. By the time he arrived in Chicago, he smelled of sweat and tuna. He missed the interview. He sat on the curb outside the bus station and wept. He was a legacy traveler, all right, a legacy of shame. Tiffany, the flight attendant who had sneered, "You don't belong here," found that the world agreed. She didn't belong in the sky. Meridian fired her for cause, meaning she received no unemployment benefits. The flight attendant union refused to grieve her termination, issuing a statement that racism is not a labor right. She applied to Delta. Rejected. She applied to United. Rejected. She applied to Spirit. Rejected. Desperate, she moved back to her hometown in New Jersey. She got a job at a high-end boutique in the mall. It lasted 3 days. On the 3rd day, a customer, a well-dressed black woman who looked vaguely like Eleanor Vance, walked in. Tiffany froze. "Can I help you?" Tiffany stammered. The woman looked at Tiffany's name tag. She pulled out her phone, checked something, and then looked back up. "No," the woman said calmly. "I don't think you can. I'd like to speak to your manager." The manager fired Tiffany on the spot to avoid a scene. Tiffany ended up working the night shift at an Amazon fulfillment center. It was brutal, physical work. She spent 10 hours a day on her feet, running between aisles, timed by a ruthless algorithm. There was no first class. There was no power trip. There was just the relentless beep of the scanner and the ache in her back. Every time she saw a plane fly over the warehouse, she felt a sharp pang of loss. She had grounded herself. Captain Miller fared no better. The FAA stripped his license for failure to command, citing his inability to de-escalate a non-threatening situation. He was a 50-year-old pilot who couldn't fly. He ended up teaching driving school to teenagers in Florida. Every day, he sat in the passenger seat of a Toyota Corolla, terrified as 16-year-olds merged onto the highway, screaming at them to watch the lane. It was a purgatory of asphalt and anxiety, a far cry from the cockpit of a Dreamliner. While her tormentors were living out their personal tragedies, Dr. Elena Vance was architecting a new world order. The acquisition of Meridian's assets by Sovereign Airways was the coup of the century. With Elena's $4 billion injection, Sovereign didn't just buy planes, they bought the future. Elena didn't just want to make money, she wanted to make a point. She took a seat on the board of Sovereign and demanded the creation of the Vance Protocol. This wasn't just a diversity pamphlet. It was a hard-coded operational rule. 1. No discretionary removal. No paying passenger could be removed from a flight unless they posed a verified physical threat, confirmed by 3 independent witnesses. 2. The equity audit. Every Sovereign flight was monitored by AI to track how staff interacted with passengers of different demographics. Discrepancies in service were flagged instantly. 3. The 1A rule. If a first-class seat was double-booked or oversold, the priority always went to the passenger who checked in first, regardless of status tier. The displaced passenger would be offered a private charter or $50,000 cash. The industry laughed at first. They said it was too expensive. They said it was woke nonsense. Then the numbers came in. Sovereign Airways saw a 400% increase in bookings from minority business travelers. They captured the entire market of creatives, tech leaders, and young entrepreneurs who were sick of the old guard's snobbery. The Vance-class suites, rebranded first-class cabins with absolute privacy and no questions asked service, became the status symbol of the new economy. 6 months after the takeover, Eleanor flew to London again. This time she wasn't alone. She had rented the entire first-class cabin for a retreat with the recipients of the Vance Scholarship, 20 young black women studying aerospace engineering and finance. As they boarded, the flight crew didn't sneer. They beamed. "Welcome aboard, Dr. Vance," the purser said, a genuine warmth in his eyes. "It's an honor to have you flying, Sovereign." Elena took her seat in 1A. It was the same model of plane she had been kicked off of, a customized Boeing 787. But the energy was different. The air felt lighter. She looked out the window as they taxied. They passed a graveyard of planes on the far side of the tarmac, old jets with the paint peeling off. She squinted. On one of the tails, fading but visible, was the logo of Meridian Atlantic. It looked like a fossil, a relic of a time when power was something you hoarded, not something you built. Her phone buzzed. It was a text from Sir Julian Cross. Subject: Q3 earnings, Elena. We just surpassed British Airways in transatlantic market share. The board wants to name the new terminal at Heathrow after you. Thoughts? Elena smiled. She typed back, Don't name it after me. Name it the Horizon Terminal. Let's keep looking forward. She put her phone down and accepted a glass of sparkling water with lime from the flight attendant. Thank you, Elena said. You're welcome, Dr. Vance, the young woman replied. Is there anything else I can get you? Maybe some champagne to celebrate? Elena looked at the young students around her, laughing, opening their laptops, dreaming of their futures. They were loud, they were joyful, and they were completely, unapologetically present. No, Elena said, raising her water glass in a toast to the cabin. I have everything I need right here. As the plane roared down the runway, lifting effortlessly into the sky, Eleanor Vance didn't look back at the ground. She knew the people who had tried to hold her down were still there, stuck in the gravity of their own smallness. She was gone. She was stratospheric. The $4 billion hadn't just bought an airline, it had bought freedom, not just for her, but for every person who would ever sit in seat 1A and know, without a shadow of a doubt, that they belonged. And that is how one woman turned a moment of humiliation into a $4 billion weapon. Elena Vance didn't scream, she didn't throw a punch, and she didn't beg. She hit them where it hurts the most, their wallet. It's a brutal reminder that true power isn't about being the loudest person in the room. It's about being the one holding the keys to the castle. Meridian Atlantic learned the hard way that you never judge a book by its cover, especially when that book can write you out of existence. If you enjoyed this story of high-altitude justice and corporate revenge, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a story. And tell me in the comments, what would you have done if you were Elena? Would you have bankrupted the airline or done something even worse? I'll see you in the next video.